Day 2 in the stats unit, we talk about the 5-number summary, outliers, and fences. So if we were in class, I would gather data. As you were coming in, I would ask you, how many hours of sleep did you get the night before? And we would write that down and make an organized list and find the 5-number summary. Since this is just the YouTube video, I just made up some numbers. So if we skip to step 3 right here, let's say each of these numbers represents the hours of sleep that a certain student in our class got the previous night. Let's find the 5-number summary and make a box plot of the data. So if the numbers were not in order, our first step would be to put the numbers in order from smallest to largest. That's already done for us. So the second step is we're going to find our 5-number summary. I would start by finding the median. And to do that, we can cross off numbers from each end until we find the middle number. And sometimes we have an odd number of data and we have a middle number in our data set. In this case, there's 2 numbers that are in the middle, and so we have to find the middle of those 2 numbers. And so the middle of 6 and 7 is 6.5. But if you didn't know that, we could find the average of those numbers, add them up. 6 plus 7 is 13, and divide by 2, and that would give us 6.5. So again, if you're trying to find the middle of 2 numbers, you average them or add them up, divide by 2. All right, so let's remember it's that, and I'm going to erase my little marks here. I'm going to try. Okay, there we go. Okay, so next let's find, well, we have the minimum and the maximum. Those are easy. But to find Q1, the lower quartile, we're going to look at all the numbers below the median. And so we're going to take a look at all these numbers below the median and find the middle of those numbers. That would be Q1. So again, I'm going to cross off until we find the middle number. Again, there's 2 numbers in the middle. The middle of 5 and 5 is, of course, 5. If you didn't know that, you would add them up, divide by 2. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. To find Q3, the upper quartile, let's again look at all the data points above the median number. You never include the median in Q1 or Q3. You're finding Q1 and Q3. All right, so we're going to cross those off and find the middle of 7 and 8.5. Again, if you don't know what that is, we're going to add them up, divide by 2. So let's do that here. I'm going to do 7 plus 8.5 and divide by 2 to find the average. 7.75. So let me write that in. 7.75. All right, so our 5-number summary, and you can just write them in order from the minimum all the way to the max, is 2. Q1 is 5, the median is 6.5, Q3 is 7.5, and the max is 10. So there's our 5-number summary for this, and then we can build the box plot. And did I ask us to make a dot plot? Okay, I'm going to build the box plot right here because I don't have room. And we have to make sure we include the minimum, which is 2, and go all the way up to 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Okay, so when you build your box plot, you scale it so or your number line so that you have at least the minimum and the maximum value, and everything else is evenly spaced. And I always start by putting dots on the min and max. So at 2 there's a dot, and at 10 there's a dot. And some people build their box plots on the number line. I like to do it above or below. For Q1 to Q3, I'm going to put lines. So at 5, we put a line. At 6.5, we put a line. And at 7.5, we put a line. So there's the box. And then you draw your whiskers connecting the box to the min and max. Okay. It says, after seeing a box plot of the same data, count the amount of dots that are below Q1. What percentage of the data does this represent? How about the percent of dots between Q1 and Q3? And I don't have dots here, I just have like the numbers, so we can just count the numbers, I guess. Okay, so it says count the amount of dots that are below Q1. Below Q1. Q1 was 5, and it was this 5 right here. And there are 3 below, and let's see how many data points were in our data set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3 out of 12. So if we get that percentage, that's 1/4 of the data. So 1/4 of the data is below Q1. And it says, how about the dots between Q1 and Q3? So Q1 to Q3, I'll do in green, is from here to here. And if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 out of 12, half the data. Half the data is between Q1 and Q3. So Q1, it stands for the first quartile. And Q3 stands for the third quartile. And why are they called quartiles? Well, how many quarters are there in a dollar? And there are 4 quarters in a dollar. So if you look at how this is broken up, here's a quarter of the data in the first quartile, or below the first quartile. Here's a second quarter of the data between Q1 and the median. Here's another quarter of our data between the median and Q3, and the last quarter of our data. So you have the same amount of data in each of those circles that I drew. There would be 3 data points in each of those circles. So a quarter of the data is in each quartile, and that's why they're named that. It says, what else could we refer to the median as? And that would be the middle. It says, how many hours of sleep would you consider to be unusual? Too little or too much? Where were those limits located? And if you notice, we had a 2 kind of hanging out here at the end and the 10. So you'd have to ask yourself, would those be considered outliers? Do they not belong with the rest of the data? And there's a way to actually calculate outliers, but in this course we will not focus on that. So I would say maybe 2. Is 2 an outlier? It seems to be further away than the rest of the data. All right, so today we're going to go over 3 new terms. The first is the range. I might ask you, what is the range of a certain set of data? And it's the maximum minus the minimum. The interquartile range, which you might see written as IQR, the interquartile range, is the distance between Q3 and Q1. So it's kind of like a range, but instead of max minus min, it's Q3, that number, minus Q1. And then an outlier is any data points that don't really fit in with the rest of the data. So I would say if someone got like 18 hours of sleep, that would definitely not fit in with everyone else's data in this data set right here. So the outliers are kind of outside the data set. Do you think any of our data values from the sleep survey are outliers, and why? And I said, well, maybe 2. 2 seems like it is pretty far away from the rest of the data points, which are only like 1 to 2 away from each other. Okay, let's practice. It says, just by looking at these sets, no calculating necessary, do you think they have any outliers? And if you do, go ahead and list them. So these, I mean, there's no right or wrong answers, just what do you think? Do you think any of these data points are too little or too high to belong with the rest of the data set? And so if we're looking at A, we might say, hey, there's that 26 there. Is that an outlier? In B, they seem pretty close to each other. So I would say no outliers. And in set C, if we take a look, again, they all seem pretty close to each other. So I would say probably no outliers for B, for C. All right, now this 5-number summary, it didn't take us too long to do with the list that I came up with for the sleep survey. But what if you don't like calculating it by hand, or what if I gave you like just a huge list of numbers? There are faster ways to calculate the 5-number summary. If we were in class, I would hand you a graphing calculator and we would do it on that. But since we're not in class, you can go to Desmos.com and you can also download this as a free download on your phone or your device if you go to Desmos.com. And so I encourage you to do that. Download the calculator app at some point, or you can use it on your Chromebook or computer. So let me pull mine up. So here's what it looks like when I go to Desmos.com. We're doing the graphing calculator, and all the steps are written out on our little sheet here. So the first thing is we have to enter our data. So if you hit this plus, we can add a bunch of things. We're going to add our data in a table. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it in this X1. And so let me find my data. So now the data we're going to look at is we're going to look at hurricanes. And so it's the name of the hurricane, the year, the category or type, and the damage. And we're going to take a look at the cost of these hurricanes right here. In class, we would discuss, well, you have the category or type of hurricanes. And if you take a look at Hurricane Andrew in 1992, that was a Category 5 hurricane. And if you look at Katrina, which was more recent, only a Category 3, why did it cost so much more? So in class, we would discuss, well, why was Katrina so much more expensive than Andrew? So think about that. and perhaps in class we will discuss that. But right now we're going to enter this data, and we're just going to do the number in billions. So I'm just going to type in 108 for Katrina, and that'll stand for 108 billion. So 108. And I'm just going to go ahead and look at my list. The next one was Sandy at 71.4 billion. The next one is Ike at 29.5. Andrew's 26.5. Wilma is 20.6. Irene is 15.6. Charlie is 15. Ivan is 14.2. Rita is 10. And Francis is 8.9. Again, these are all in billions. All right, and then you can click below, or you can click the plus. What do I say in my instructions? Okay, enter a plus, add a table. We did that. When you're done, you can type in. Okay, so I'm just going to click here. And we are going to calculate the 5-number summary. So the first one is, we're going to do function stats. Okay, so let's find the minimum first. So a few ways to do it. We can either type in minimum and then tell the computer or Desmos what list we want. It's X1, list X1 is right here. And then if we hit enter, our minimum was 8.9. So if we had a long list of numbers, it could pull out that minimum very quickly versus just looking at it, although this is not that long of a list. All right, let's find Q1. Now you can either, if you don't know the command, you can go to this calculator and go to functions, and these are stat functions, and there's a bunch here. And we want a quartile. And so again, we have to tell what list, and if it is quartile, we have to tell it which quartile, because there's 2 of them. There's actually 3, but quartile 1 is what we're looking for, so there it is. And 14.2 is that number. We can do the median. Again, we could type in median. Or we could have gone to our functions and found median, I think is right there. And then it's, again, tell it what list. So there's our median, 18.1. We want quartile 3, so either type it in. It's probably faster to use this button, isn't it? Quartile. And then tell it what list, X1, third quartile, 29.5, and lastly, we want our maximum of list X1. Okay, so there's a pretty quick way to do it. Again, some people prefer to do it by hand, especially if there's not a lot of numbers, but as we progress in this unit, I'm going to be giving you a lot of data, or data that has a lot of numbers, and so it will be faster to use Desmos or a graphing calculator to do that. So again, I encourage you to download the app or become familiar with using it on your Chromebook or computer, typing in your list, and then finding the 5-number summary. So let's write those down. Ooh, where are we? Right here. Okay, so I'm going to pop this back up and then write it for you guys to see. Okay, so min. And again, these are on billions. Okay, let's go down. 18.1, 29.5, 108. Oh, and there's one more, mean, the average. So let's see if it has average on here. Probably does. Mean, there it is. So mean is another word for average in that. And then X1. So there's the average cost, 31.97 billion. We should have added the new hurricanes, such as Laura, but I didn't have time to do that. Okay. So now if we take a look, here are our numbers. Okay, so you should be comfortable using technology to find a 5-number summary. Okay, so not too much new information. So I would like you to practice. Your assignment will be pages 8 and 9, and I'll put the answer key up so you can check your answers. Oh, it's 8, 9, and 10, I'm sorry. It's only part of page 10. So pages 8 to 10 you will want to work on in your packet, and then check your answers.